Welcome back to the double leg. I'm one half of the show, Hey Jod Picks. The other half of the show, the parlay. Joining me in to break down some UFC 303 main event, the rematch, Alex Pereira versus Yuri Prochazka 2, a fight that didn't happen too long ago, and a fight that both fighters are taking it on short notice. Of course, we got the replacement there. We got the replacement co-main event, Brian Ortega, Diego Lopes. Absolute banger. I'm calling that one to be probably the fight I'm most looking forward to, but a lot of fights I'm looking forward to on this card. I mean, overall from top to bottom, pretty solid pay-per-view. Prelims are decent. The main card is pretty solid. Start off the card, Ian Machado Garry versus Michael Venom Page. I think the fight could end up being boring, but it is a matchup that I'm looking forward to seeing how it plays out. So that's a fun fight. We got the piss break women's fight, and then we got the Anthony Smith versus Roman Dolidze, which we all know how that fight really came about. Just Jamal Hill versus Khalil Roundtree turned into Anthony Smith versus Roman Dolidze like 4 fights later. So, yeah, main card is pretty decent. Maybe you could say it's an upgrade from the McGregor card because that one was looking a little bleak other than the main event. But here we are, pay-per-view fight week. Let's talk about last week, though. UFC Saudi went in the profit on the week, plus 2.7 units. So glad to get back on track after a brutal Apex card the weekend before. Hit some decent dogs. Volkov. Who else did I hit? I kind of forget.
Uzdemir.
Well, yeah, he was a slight dog. Had 2 units on him. And then, a couple of props. Hit the Gajiazilov decision plus 850. And then also had a couple dog shots that almost cashed. Nicholas Dalby. And then it had a nice little over 1.5 in that Gajiazilov fight. It was plus 170. Yeah. And that fight really didn't stand a chance of going under if Gajiazilov was just laying and praying. So overall, it was a pretty successful weekend. And then, of course, if you tail the DFS plays, we had another monster weekend. Almost swept. We went 5-1 on underdog. So we hit 2 out of the 3 plays. And then on better, we hit 2 out of 3 plays as well. Went 5-1 on better as well. So, yeah, another big weekend on the DFS apps. Let me actually just pull up because I did the math on my DFS record for June because I was pretty curious to see what it was. So on better picks, we're sitting just in the month of June, 4 UFC cards in. We're sitting at 20-6 for 77% accuracy. And then on underdog, we're 21-3, 88% accuracy. And that's only counting the 2-leggers to avoid duplicates. So whenever I put out like the 5-leggers and the 8-leggers on better, we nearly hit the 8-legger on better to win 10K, but Naimov screwed us. Same with the 5-legger. We're not going to count those because those are a lot of duplicates. But yeah, DFS has been absolutely crushing. So hopefully we end up June with another sweep or at least another profitable DFS card. How'd it go for you?
I got my ass kicked at lost minus 6.2 units, and I knew it was going to happen from the first fight of the night, and I was really tempted to cash everything out, but decided to ride it out. I mean, I had Zhao Long because I thought the pressure would get to Lee a little more than it did, but I also thought Zhao Long would do more with his control time up against the cage, especially with, knees of his own and elbows. And, Chang Ho Lee won solely off the knees. I honestly, I watched the fight back. That's all he did. I don't know if he really had. That's it.
Terrible.
Oh, yeah. And, I thought Zhao Long had a chance to raise his hand. I did think it was a very close fight, and it wasn't a robbery in the least bit. But I knew once that fight didn't go my way, I had bad feelings. I had Kung Ho Kang, and I had him in round 2, round 3 submission, and he gets full mount both times early in the round. And I'm thinking, okay, here it is. He's going to have a chance to get this. And he just never looked for anything. It was weird, man. It's like he was content just kind of staying on top. I don't know if he was scared he was going to lose position or what, but he just didn't do much with it. So that was frustrating. And at the end of every round, he gets, clipped. So that sucks. My best play of the night was Nicholas Dalby. They had plus 3.5 spread on him at plus 120 on DraftKings, which is insane to me that you get plus money on that bet. So that was one of my bigger plays. I had Felipe Lima and Naimov over 2.5, which I know screwed you on your DFS plays too, which, that fight looked like it was cruising over 2.5 rounds. and
Dude,
then
I was sitting there. I had the straight play on it too for the over 2.5, and I was sitting there, and my buddy Kyle walks in, producer for Show Me the Money Pod, and he's like, "How the fights?" I'm like, "Still, every fight's going to a decision." And then he goes, "Yeah, well, this one's probably going to too." And I'm like, "All right, there's the jinx. There's the jinx right there." And then the next round, he gets subbed with like a minute and 15 before the 2.5 mark. So yeah, that sucked. But sorry.
Sucks, man. No, and after that play missed, I'm like, all right, if that was a good read, I thought at minus 130. I was like, that's I thought that was a solid bet. And when that's not hitting, I was like, nothing else is going to hit tonight. I know it's not. So I lost on D-Rod too. And I just thought at plus 185, with all the shit that Kelvin was dealing with, I thought D-Rod would be able to throw way more volume, but he took a few of Kelvin's shots and just realized Kelvin had a lot of power, and I think it made him a little more hesitant than he normally is.
Yeah.
And I think D-Rod's a step slower too. And I had it in my mind that might be the case, and I think it definitely was. So yeah. So overall, kind of shitty. I didn't go in heavily on these fights. I was really close to taking the shot on Volkov, which I should have, and I was really close to hammering Whitaker, which I should have. I just didn't have good feelings about either one of them. So yeah, man, it was one of those cards from the very beginning that just sucked, honestly. And we have all these decisions, which is the last thing I'll say about this card and previous cards that we've had lately is, when you're betting on these fights, a lot of the time you can kind of take a fighter based off, okay, there's a possibility he gets the knockout or the submission, but when every fight is going to decision, it's like, man, you're really playing with danger here, because you never know when the judges are going to screw you, or these close fights you think your fighter won, like probably not going to go your way. So yeah, it's just one of those nights, man. But I am looking forward to 303. I like this card more than any card I've seen in a while. These lines are good. I'm excited for this one, man.
I do. I want to go back to the D-Rod one. I'm done with the narrative of if someone's gonna miss weight or they miss weight. I'm done with the narrative that they're like underprepared, because it's basically at the point that they're going in there with a huge advantage. So if they miss weight, honestly, I feel like I should just bet on them, because they're going in there with an advantage. They're bigger. They don't have to cut the weight. They're not as depleted. Like, I hate that when the fighters miss weight, but it just seems like a massive advantage. So we always think like if they're missing weight, they're underprepared, but they're not. They're actually going in there better prepared physically than their opponent. So yeah, I'm done with that. It's so annoying. But
no, I agree with you. I will say I think Kelvin probably was underprepared. I think he's just more of a dog. I think he's just more of a junkyard dog than D-Rod was, and he's able to fight through like any injuries he had or any like fatigue. Like Kelvin was huffing and puffing, but he was able to also kind of dig through it. Yeah, like he was able to dig through it and do whatever he needed to do to get the win, which was impressive for sure. But he's got to figure it out, dude. I feel like he's like the most wasted talent we've seen in the UFC. Like, he's got a lot of losses, yeah, and he's fought tough competition. But if he could dial it in and fight at 170, the dude would be an absolute savage. So it's disappointing.
All right, let's go on to UFC 303. We're going to go through, give you a full card breakdown, every single fight, give you a prediction as well. But these are picks. If you want the bets, jump in the Home of Fight Picks premium membership and follow Home of Picks on Instagram, because later in the week, we're going to be doing a promotion where you'll get 50% off. So stay tuned for that. Let's get into it. First fight of the night, we got Ricky Simón coming in as the favorite over Vinicius Oliveira. Oliveira sits at 28 years of age, coming off a highlight knockout to Bernardo Sopai. And before that, another highlight knockout on the Contender Series. So the guy is very dangerous, and he's taking on Ricky Simón, who is coming off back-to-back losses to Song Yadong and Mario Batista. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, this one for me is one of the more tough fights to pick and break down. I do think, from a betting standpoint, the value is all on Oliveira. Plus 172 on a guy that dangerous, never really a bad bet. But Simón, I'm just going to say Ricky because I never know which one to call him. He's got the game to where if you're going to come in wild against him, like Oliveira can be, and you're going to throw big shots and you're really going to load up, he's going to duck under and he's going to take you down. And the guy's very strong. He's very scrappy on the ground. He'll land some decent ground and pound. He can control you a little bit. And, he's not completely lost on the feet either. He's got some pop. He's explosive. And, you match that up against Oliveira. I think it's going to be a phenomenal, fun fight on the feet. it's just, Ricky's got that wrestling in his back pocket, and for Oliveira in his debut, I guess, against Bernardo Sopage, Bernardo had the takedown. I forget how many times in the first round and a half, and he got him easily. Like every time Oliveira would overextend or swing wildly, like Sopage just kind of dumped him real quick and was able to control him. Got the full mount a few times right away. So that was kind of a red flag for me, seeing him that he's going up against Ricky here, because I do think Ricky's a stronger guy than Bernardo was. I think his wrestling's probably a little more technical, and he's got a lot more experience in that department too. So I think this is going to be a tough fight for Oliveira, but being that dangerous, while the fight's on the feet, he's going to have the chance to touch the chin and really hurt Ricky here. And on the ground, if Ricky gets a little bit tired, I was really impressed with how Oliveira was able to have that much energy in the end of the fight after getting taken down and controlled so many times earlier in his last fight, that he still had the pop and the power and the explosiveness to land that flying knee and get the knockout on Bernardo Sopage. So for the pick, I'm going to take Ricky to do the same here. If you're betting on this fight, I'm definitely looking at some kind of inside the distance prop, or just maybe a dog shot, small bet on Oliveira, because plus 172 on a guy that dangerous always kind of piques my interest.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking the same way. Based on the odds, like Ricky Simón at minus 225 is a little tough for me, just because he has the experience edge here. Obviously, he's got a wrestling edge, but on the feet, he's been knocked out before. And honestly, when he does get his wrestling going, he doesn't do a ton of damage with it. And he does have, some decent, I call them kind of like bully chokes, like an arm triangle choke or something like that. But he's not really going to be looking to take your back and sink in a rear naked choke. He's want to keep top pressure and look to do damage there, or just out muscle you. But the problem that I've been seeing with Ricky Simón, and what I really thought he was going to try to do against Batista, is put the pressure on him. Like, I thought Simón would come out against Batista and just try to be forward, just keep coming forward. He was just fighting off his back foot. He just allowed Batista into the fight and to gain momentum. So if he comes in here with that type of game plan against Oliveira, I think that's very there's a lot of worries that go with that game plan, because you can't let Vinicius get off on you, because he throws super hard. He's got a big overhand right. If he misses that, he's going to swing a big left hook. And then he's got some really hard calf kicks as well. So even if Ricky Simón gets him to the ground, he's got to do some damage with it, because even if he does get him to the ground and he doesn't do damage, and then the fight goes back to the feet, Oliveira is going to be landing some really impactful strikes, and that could sway the judges to go his way. But I also look at this and see that Vinicius Oliveira, he's only been to like 2 decisions his entire career, and he has been knocked out 3 times. So I'm actually kind of looking more towards like an under here. Minus 135 is the under 2.5, which kind of looks decent to me, because Oliveira can get knocked out before. He got knocked out 2 years ago against Ali Taleb, who is decent, but he's not near the caliber of like a Ricky Simón. So Ricky Simón does pack a punch when he goes, and Oliveira's been knocked out before, and I think Oliveira could probably knock out Simón as well, because Simon's been chinned a couple times. And even on the ground, Ricky Simón could just be that much stronger than him and find one of those bully chokes. So I'm kind of leaning more towards the under, but for a play, or for a pick, I guess, I'm going to go with Ricky and just take the experience and the wrestling edge, because Oliveira doesn't have the greatest takedown defense, and he definitely hasn't faced a wrestler the level of Ricky Simón yet. So Simón will be the pick, but it's an interesting one to me.
Who did Simón beat in his debut? By a submission. Technical guillotine.
Oh, Merab.
Yeah,
that was a fluke.
Yeah.
No,
outside of that win, I kind of look at it like, Oliveira, the jury's still out and what kind of fighter he's going to be at the UFC level. And I try to think, is he, does he fit more in with the guys that Ricky has beaten, or the guys that he's lost to? Because Ricky's really only losing to Mario Batista, Song Yadong, Rob Font, Uriah Faber, and then he hadn't lost, for years before that. But lately, he's beaten guys like Brian Kelleher, Rafael Assunção, who's 40 years old, Jack Shore, who's now, lost a couple. So I don't know. It's tough for me. It seems like if Ricky can just stick to a game plan here, get the wrestling going and pressure him, he's going to win 2 rounds comfortably. But if he slips up for 1 second, he could definitely get the lights shut out. So it's going to be a fun one, Bill.
Good one to open up the night. Let's move on. We got Carlos Hernandez coming in as a big underdog against the debuting Ray Tsuruya, sitting at minus 520. Another Japanese prospect, undefeated Japanese prospect, who was the road to the UFC champion for the flyweight division. Carlos Hernandez, a guy that has had a few fights in the UFC, kind of been up and down. He's 2-2, but his losses are to Tatsuro Taira. His last time out, he got knocked out, and then he got subbed by Alan Nascimento. He's going to need some takedown defense here because our boy Ray Tsuruya is going to be spamming him over and over and over again. This guy's a really good grappler. He's got a lot of ground and pound finishes, a lot of submission finishes. So Hernandez is going to need to mind his P's and Q's on the feet with that takedown defense. If he does that, I think he's got a decent chance to win, but that's a tough ask because this guy just relentless with the takedowns. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely relentless. And seems like he's got the cardio too to hold up. Like you never know when a guy's making his debut and maybe he's, a little bit has too much adrenaline or has that adrenaline dump and kind of gasses trying to shoot takedowns with that wrestling style. But I look at Carlos Hernandez and he's like a decent boxer, not much power. He's a 125er. A lot of these guys don't carry the biggest punch. And so far in the UFC, he beat Dennis Bondar by unanimous decision. But I mean, he beat Victor Altamirano by a split decision, which was very close. And then Daniel Barres by split decision on the Contender Series to get into the UFC. And Barres took him down 5 times in that fight. Now, if Daniel Barres, who is a good wrestler, is taking you down like that, I feel like this kid's going to take him down at ease. Maybe not the first one, but eventually he's going to get the fight to the ground. And there's going to be a massive skill gap in the grappling and the jiu-jitsu on the ground. So this one's simple for me. I think Tsuruya is going to get this thing done. I think by submission. I'm guessing that's probably going to be juice to the gills. I don't know. You might look at like a TKO prop. Maybe he mounts him, gets him in a bad position, and you can get a little value there. But for the pick, yeah, I think he walks through Carlos Hernandez. So yeah, probably by submission. But I don't know. I don't see this one being too competitive.
Yeah, the problem with Hernandez is he just doesn't have any pop, bro. Like he's got no knockouts on his professional record. So it's not really like he can gain the respect from Tsuruya on the feet. And I don't think at 22 years old, like Ray Tsuruya is going to be chinny, Like usually when you're younger, you got a fresher chin. You haven't been through those wars. So I don't really see Carlos Hernandez getting much respect on the feet. I think he probably gets taken down early. And from the film that I watched, the guy loves to give up his back to get back up to his feet. He'll push off, turn away, get to a knee, and try to get back up to the cage. And when he did that against Alan Nascimento, he got his back taken and then he got choked out. So I don't know. Obviously, if the fight plays out on the feet, I think it's Carlos Hernandez. He's got good boxing. He's got good volume, and he's fairly durable. So there's that, but it's just probably not going to play out on the feet. Like Tsuruya is probably just going to get takedowns. And yeah, he's going to be the pick, even though he's minus 520. Like, I wouldn't parlay it, obviously. It's not really add much value, but you're probably going to have to look for a prop. So you either take him by sub or a KO, most likely. So I think he probably finds a finish. I don't know that he rides out a decision, maybe, but I don't know. What is the over-under on that? Look at it right now. Under 2.5 is minus 180. So yeah, they're expecting a finish. And I probably see it as a rear naked choke. Honestly, I don't think Hernandez is going to get ground and pounded out. I think he probably gives up his neck eventually. Or Tsuruya's got some pretty weird subs, like weird positions. If you watch the film on him, gets in some really weird positions. So maybe find something different than a rear naked choke. But
probably super strong too for 125. Like you can just tell in there. And I just don't think. I mean, you can see it in their frames, like in this picture. Like he's kind of a really thin, slender guy. Tsuruya is, jacked, cut up, broad shoulders, like really strong dude. So on the mat, I think he's just gonna maul him.
You got some veins popping out of those arms, even though it's like a darkened road to the UFC.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. Not that one. We got our Andre Arlovski sitting at plus 220 against Martin Buday. Buday, was the victim of Shamil Gaziev last time out. I think we were there for that one.
Yeah, 296.
Yeah, 296. He got TKO'd in the second round, pretty much just beat up the entire fight. So coming off a loss, first UFC loss, here he is as a big favorite against the veteran. Probably a retirement fight for Andrei Arlovski. It seems like it's kind of set up to be that way. He's on a pay-per-view card. He's been fighting in the Apex for like the past 2 years. So here he is finally on a pay-per-view card on the prelims, and he's a big dog. Is there any chance you're taking him?
I want to say yes. And it's just like the fact that he's 45 years old smacks you in the face. Like when you start really breaking it down, Buday, like the loss to Gadzhiev is just ages so badly considering what, Gadzhiev looked like in his last fight, getting beat like that, quitting on the stool in the fourth against Jairzinho Rosenstruck. But Gadzhiev too, when he's able to turn up the pace in that first round and a half against Buday, he really landed some damage, and he really is a good striker and powerful guy. But that's not what Arlovski's going to do. Arlovski doesn't have that kind of pace. He doesn't have that kind of strength in his punches anymore. Like at one time, for sure. But if Arlovski wants to go the wrestling route and try to get takedowns, I just don't know if he's going to have the strength and the explosiveness to keep it up for, 2 rounds, to win 2 rounds here. I think Buday is a guy that's not great anywhere. He's got some decent striking. Outside the Gadzhiev loss, he's pretty durable. But he's just, he wins all these decisions. He'll have more volume, I think. I think he's going to have probably the better gas tank at, going up against an Arlovski who's 45. Arlovski's looked really good in the first, few minutes of his last couple of fights. It's just once it gets to the second, he starts eating shots. He's just not really, quite there like he was in the first. And then on the flip side, it's like Buday doesn't really hit guys with that much power. Maybe Arlovski hangs around for a little bit longer in this one. So it's interesting. I've never been big on Buday. I think, some of his wins in the UFC, split decision to Lucas Dresky, not the best. Jake Collier and him were pretty neck and neck in strikes. Josh Parisian, he subbed, but it's Josh Parisian. Like this guy is lacking a really big, good win in the UFC. And then when he fights Shamil Gadzhiev, he gets, TKO'd in the second. I had that bet too. I had that plus 900 round 2 on Gadzhiev. I don't really even remember why I would have taken that, but I remember liking it that week, especially after seeing Gadzhiev, fade really fast in the last fight. But yeah, man, I just think Arlovski could be live if he can just steal that first round and a half. If not, he's probably just going to get jabbed and outpointed. So I'm going to take Buday for the pick, but I'll be rooting for Arlovski here.
Yeah, I think it's just crazy that Arlovski's still fighting, man. Like, Jesus Christ. He's 50. This will be his 58th professional fight. Like, the dude's been fighting since, like, the 90s, bro. Like, first fight was 1999. I wasn't even born yet, bro. Like, his first professional fight, I wasn't even born yet. That's just nuts. And he lost.
I wonder if this is it. I wonder if this is his last fight. Like, they're like, hey, we'll give you a pay-per-view slot against the guy that maybe you can make competitive with.
It's got to be. I mean, he's on a 3-fight losing streak. And if you look at his record, he's been knocked out 12 times.
Yeah.
Been subbed 3 times. But it's not really like, I don't think he's chinny. Like at the end of the day, it's not like he's getting touched once and he's going out. Like I know Dante Almeida knocked him out a year ago, but it was a nice right hook and he didn't like go out. He's not like going out cold. So I don't know that Buday is really going to come in here and just like, knock him out. So I think this probably ends up being somewhat of a close decision unless Buday mixes in some type of ground game, which I think would probably be his best path to victory because on the feet, he's not really a great striker. I mean, he's just big and he'll throw some big hooks, but at sometimes he's just doesn't have a ton of volume. Like he's got a negative striking differential. You said it before. He's been fighting the bottom of the barrel guys. Like Dresky got cut. Collier got cut. Parisian, I'm pretty sure he got cut. So I don't know, man. Like I don't think Buday. Like how does he cover minus 300? Like it's a fight where I think Buday probably wins, but at the price, I'm not even really gonna parlay that. Like minus 300. So it kind of makes me look at the Arlovski side a little bit. And I think on the feet, he's really not super easy to hit. He actually for being 45, he does have some decent footwork, some decent head movement. He's got a good jab. And if he doesn't get knocked out and then this fight goes to a decision, he's kind of a dog in there too. Like you watch some of his recent fights, he'll go in there and put on a good performance. Like he's not a guy that's going to quit on himself. If it goes to the judges, Arlovski, they love Arlovski in Vegas. So maybe they get a little cook in there. But for a pick, I got to go with Buday just because I think he probably does win. But there's no chance I'm touching minus 295, man. Just not.
What if what if this is his last fight? I kind of hope that it is, and then he'll just come out and give it all he's got one last time.
Yeah.
We're in the post USADA era. These older dudes are winning fights. Look at Chris Weidman. Look at guys like that. Look at OSP fights. They're
OSP.
massive,
That is
massive,
a big one, man.
massive. I mean, they're massive underdogs in those fights.
I couldn't believe OSP did that to Kennedy and Zechku, man. Like,
yeah,
good lord,
turning back the clock with the roids.
Yeah,
Arlovski's probably on him more than anybody.
I hope so.
I do too.
I hope he wins. I hope he wins.
Yep.
Might actually get there on the bet. We'll see. Moving on, we got Michelle Waterson taking on Jillian Robertson, sitting at minus 186. Waterson sitting at plus 144. Waterson, 38 years of age. So she is 9 years older than her opponent. And Jillian Robertson, since moving down to 115, is 2-1. Only losses to Tabitha Ricci. Michelle Waterson, kind of in the same boat as Andrei Arlovski, but not quite to the extent of Andrei Arlovski. I mean, 4 straight losses. If you zoom out a little bit further, she's 1-6 in her last 7. So not exactly racking up the W's, but she does have a lot more experience, probably has a striking edge. Do you think she can get it done as an underdog?
Man, I don't think so. I haven't really loved what I've seen from her outside of her fight with Luana Pinejo. I thought she had a chance to win that. She outstruck her. She landed a takedown in that fight. But against like Madrina Rodriguez, she just got beat to a pulp on the feet. Like it was a nasty, lopsided fight. Lemos was able to get the submission on her. I just, her only win being Angie Hill, and based off the fact that Angie doesn't really land damage outside of her last submission win, she's not really a grappler by any means. She's not the most dangerous fighter in the world. And when you're not a dangerous fighter and you can stand and trade with Michelle Waterson, it's always going to give Michelle a chance because she is very, very good and technical with the strikes. She's accurate and racks up a lot of volume. But if you do have that, danger factor like Jillian Robertson does, I think it's going to take one time for Jillian to get her on the ground. And I think Michelle Waterson, at her age, with all the miles she's got on her career, I just think Jillian's going to be very live for the submission here. And, it's plus 225 right now. That's not a bad line for a Jillian sub. Like when Jillian's winning fights, a lot of them do come by submission. Piedra Rodriguez, Agapova by submission, Priscilla Cachoeira, Courtney Casey. I mean, that's 4 of her last 5 wins there by submission. So, yeah, I do like her here a lot. Minus 186 doesn't seem crazy either because Jillian showed against Tabitha. She's been working on her striking. Like Tabitha's a very technical boxer, and she definitely beat Jillian on the feet. But Jillian's shown she's not like a fish out of water anymore in the striking department. And when you're a little bit slower and older like Waterson Gomez, I do think Jillian's going to be able to use her striking and explosiveness to kind of get in close and get the fight to the ground or get it in a position to find takedowns here. And again, once she does, I think she's going to be very live for the sub. Give me Jillian Robertson. And when you're getting her at submission prices at plus 225, like I feel like you almost have to take that number.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty solid number too, because if she does win, it's probably by sub. But last time she did find a TKO victory. So you could probably just take her by inside the distance because it's probably not a lot different. Like inside the distance, probably plus 200 compared to like plus 225. So maybe you just take inside the distance just to be safe. Because technically, Michelle Waterson got ground and pounded out her last time out. She got beat up on the feet first and then mounted and ground and pounded out. But yeah, I think Jillian Robertson probably wins this one. My only worry is if she can't get her to the ground. I mean, Michelle Waterson is just going to make it super boring. She's just going to stick to the outside, side kick, little hya. And Jillian actually trains at my gym like once a week when she's in camp. And I think her striking is getting better. It's just when she's out there in the fight, she never really commits to anything, and it's not really like she gains respect from her opponents on the feet. She's not really cracking people with anything. She'll throw the leg kick, she'll throw the hands, and she's landing more, but it doesn't really impact much. And what I do like about Jillian is she's not a takedown artist that shoots blast doubles. Like, I was watching a lot of film on her today. She's picking single legs, looking for trips. She'll get a body lock and look for a trip that way. So I think those takedowns are a little bit, or will come a little bit more easily. And I don't think Waterson Gomez has like the greatest takedown defense. I don't think it's really been tested that often, to be honest. Like, it is tough to get inside, and that's going to be a big thing for Jillian here, is just getting inside, fill in the void, get in her space, and force her to clinch you up, or just you can't allow her to sidekick you over and over again. If she gets her to the ground, I think it's wraps, because I think Jillian is one of the best. When she gets on top, she can soften her up with the ground and pound and then look for a sub that way. And Michelle Waterson's been subbed 4 times in her career. So Jillian Robertson's the pick, but yeah, you're probably just better off taking her inside the distance, because more often than not, when it goes to a decision, she does not get her hand raised because she doesn't do enough on the feet. And usually if she gets girls to the ground, she finishes them. So probably better off taking it that way.
Dude, I'm almost shocked at how young she is too.
Yeah, 29. I mean, it's crazy that she was fighting at 125, because she was just so much smaller than these girls, and she was still picking up wins. Like, she took most of her losses at 125, but she was still finding success there too. So now at 115, she's the same size, or if not bigger, than a lot of these girls. And it obviously shows when she's on top of you, she's a lot bigger. And now she's the bigger girl.
The the thing I like about her grappling too is, like, I know, like, we'd like her to get a takedown if you're betting on her, you want her to get a takedown here, but I don't necessarily think she needs a takedown to take the back and just get the hooks in and get the body triangle. Like, she's so crafty with the grappling and submissions, and she makes it so hard too. Because in women's MMA, if you have an arm bar and you can submit from guillotine, like, so many different options of submissions, like she does. She just has options for days when she gets to the ground or takes your back. Like, she can transition to the triangle, to the arm bar, like in the blink of an eye. We've seen her do it multiple times. I think that's what's going to make it tough if it does hit the mat, or if she even just gets on the back once. So, man, plus 800 on the TKO or knockout, though. Ooh, that's pretty juicy.
Last time, man, that was picture perfect. But yeah, let's go, Jillian. Pick up another dub. Moving on, we got the biggest favorite on the card, and what could be the biggest favorite in UFC history. Peyton Talbott sit at minus 2,200 against Giannis Ghemmouri. And I remember when this fight was announced, and I'm like, Peyton Talbott's going to be like minus 800. And I guess I undersold that, because he's fucking minus 2,200. And I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's because Giannis Ghemmouri is like a terrible fighter, but I just think it's because Talbott he's that guy. Like, Giannis Ghemmouri is not good, for one. I think he's not terrible, but he's not good. So it's obviously a fight where the UFC was trying to prop up Talbott on a McGregor card, an International Fight Week card, and then McGregor pulls out, even though, this is still a big card, but he's in the spotlight now. He's been fighting at the Apex. This is their guy. Seems like they want to build. He's a massive favorite here. Obviously, he's the pick, but how do you think he gets it done?
I would think knockout TKO. I really wanted to dabble in the submission prop here, because if Ghemmouri's forced to start shooting takedowns or trying to get this to the mat, because if Ghemmouri has been watching tape, Peyton Talbott gets taken down and he gets controlled a little bit here and there. And, that's probably your path to victory against him at this level, because not many guys at this level in the UFC are going to be able to stand and strike with him. And, we've seen Peyton Talbott rack up, I think, 1 submission in his career. But I think the skills are there enough to where he would go for it if the opportunity presented itself. And you're looking at a minus 250 KO prop, which is just insane for a finishing prop. But, when I do look at the odds, submissions plus 350 just doesn't really do it for me on a submission prop on a knockout artist. So
he's minus 2,200 though.
Yeah, true.
He's a massive favorite. You're getting him to win in one way at plus 350.
Yeah.
It's kind of, you think about like the Bo Nickel Val Woodburn one, where Bo Nickel's sub was like minus what 180 or something like that, and then his
Mhm.
knockout was like plus 275. It's kind of like that.
I I think I would rather look at the round 2 finish prop, which is probably gonna be, oh, I could tell you, plus 285 for a round 2 finish, KO or submission.
I would play 2-3.
I would too. I
Yeah.
would too, because Peyton, like, he doesn't go out there and just, like, blitz you. Like, he's very methodical, and he's crafty, and he'll
Doesn't
take
even
his
have
time.
he doesn't have a single round 1 finish
Right.
record. So,
Yeah, it's all 2 threes, and, you can get round 2 KO at plus 375 right now, and, round 3 plus 750, or you can take the just round 2 finish plus 285, round 3 finish plus 650. So, I don't think it's a bad look considering it's a minus 2,200, 22 to 1 favorite. Like, it's not if you're looking for plus money, that might be your best route. So, I don't think Ghemmouri is going to have much to offer him. If you're getting body kicked, TKO'd by William Gomi, I think Peyton Talbot's going to absolutely obliterate you. So, yeah, I just don't know if it's going to come as quick as people think. Ghemmouri, these
yeah.
guys are all fast and they're athletic and tough to a degree. And, just to survive 5 minutes isn't out of the realm of possibility whatsoever. So I like these odds for round 2, 3 here.
Yeah, I do too. Ghemmouri, he didn't technically get knocked out. Like, he got caught with a nut shot and then they just waved it off. So technically, he's never really been knocked out, but I could definitely see Peyton Talbot changing that up and knocking him out, because the dude hits like a truck. He's durable as hell. He is the truth. I do believe he is the truth. Nobody's going to disagree with that after they watch the Cameron Simon fight. Um, and I'm just looking at his stats right now, and he has a 90% takedown defense. Like, Reyes Cortez went 1 of 17 on him. Nick Aguirre went 2 of 10. Cameron Simon went 0 and 3. Like, the guy is just a tank. I mean, he's 5'10.
He's big for.
He's built, he's strong, he's athletic as hell. Like, dude's got everything that you would need in a fighter. And he's got a great pace. Like, dude's gonna be really, really good. And yeah, I think it probably comes in round 2 or 3, but he is coming off the best performance of his life. Maybe he comes out super hot and just wants to make another big statement, gets him out of there in round 1. I don't know. I mean, he's the pick. We don't really need to spend too much more time on this, but he's definitely the pick. Let's move on. We got Charles Jourdain sitting at minus 128 against Gian Silva, sitting at even money. Gian Silva coming off the win over the future featherweight champion Weston Wilson, where he knocked him out in the first round. Charles Jourdain coming off a loss to Sean Woodson, a split decision, which I don't really think was a split decision. I thought he clearly lost.
Mhm.
Maybe they were trying to home cook there in Canada, but either way, coming off the loss to Sean Woodson, he's getting, I would say, probably an easier opponent. Not by the odds. Jourdain was minus 210 against Woodson, and he's minus 128 here. But this should be a really good fight. I think both guys are pretty similar skill sets, in my opinion. I would probably give a grappling edge to Jourdain, but on the feet, it's probably going to be a banger. Who you got?
Yeah. I think at plus money for Silva right now is kind of what I'm leaning. I think it is, dog or pass. Charles Jourdain's got a fun style. He's a good technical striker. He doesn't like have the most pop by any means, but he does throw a very, very good amount of volume. He can rack it up, and then if you look to shoot takedowns on him, he's going to find your neck at some point. He's very dangerous there as well. But he's 6-7 in the UFC. Like, this guy hasn't gone in there and had a great UFC career by any means. I think he's a fan favorite fighter. People like him. They like his personality, social media, his look, everything. But he doesn't really go in there and just blow you away. He's fighting Crone Gracie, which he racked up a bunch of volume, couldn't put him away. Submits Hamos, who just got submitted again for the second time in a row. And then he's losing to your Nathaniel Woods, Shane Burgos, Sean Woodson's, guys like that. So I don't necessarily think he's a world beater. I don't think he's. I'd say he's just kind of a middle of the pack guy that gets a lot of credit for, some of his performances. But Gene Silva seems like he's just this guy who wants to come in there and just loves to throw down. He loves to fight. He likes to eat shots. He likes to give shots. He's got a lot of power in his hands. I think he's going to have the power advantage on the feet. I think he's got a good chin. He's like I said, he's very crazy. He's a wild dude. You watch him bark and yell when he's walking to the octagon. The dude's just kind of a psychopath. So I think in the grappling department too, I do think he's not an easy guy that you're going to be able to just go out there and take down by any means. And while it's standing, he's going to be very dangerous to hurt Jourdain. Maybe even find the finish. If not, he's going to land the more significant strikes in this spot. So at plus money, I'm taking Gene Silva.
Yeah, I think Jourdain's just so up and down. Like,
Yeah.
I actually think he's kind of overperformed like throughout his UFC career because he's getting some finishes here and there. I mean, he's got 2 wins by guillotine, and then he's got a knockout over Marcelo Rojo and a knockout over Duho Choi. And then he's losing. I was looking at the odds today. He was almost a plus 600 underdog in his UFC debut. So that to me almost feels like they just bring him in like to fill a spot. Like this guy wasn't even like some prospect that they were looking to bring in. Like he was plus 600. And he lost that fight and then ends up having a crazy fight against Duho Choi. And then the UFC's like, okay, this guy's pretty fun. And then since then, they match him up with decent opponents like Andre Fili, a Josh Kulabau, a Julian Erosa, and he's losing everybody. Losing to those guys, but he'll beat the guys like a Marcelo Rojo or an Andre Ewell. He doesn't really have that many good wins. And even the Kron Gracie fight, like Kron didn't shoot a single takedown.
Yeah.
Like Jourdain didn't really give him much of an opportunity to. I think he fought pretty smart that way, but he's kind of just fighting a punching bag at that point, And then I watched that Nathaniel Wood fight, and Nathaniel Wood, I don't think is really like a world beater, but he made Charles Jourdain look like he didn't even belong in there. Like it was a really rough fight to watch. He's so up and down to me that usually I don't like to take those fighters. I don't like to bet on those fighters for one, and I don't like to pick them. I mean, I in certain spots, sure, but this is a spot that I don't really have too much confidence in him because I think Gene Silva, he is the newer guy. We haven't really seen him at the UFC level too much. I mean, his only fight is Weston Wilson. But I watched that Contender Series fight against Kevin Vallejos, who since that fight has picked up 2 more wins on the regionals.
He's not a bad fighter at all.
Yeah, I think he's a good fighter. And Gene Silva looked really composed in there. I think he dropped the first round, and in the next 2 rounds, he was just cracking him with big shots, bloodying him up. And he looked pretty good. I mean, he showed a good gas tank as well. So I think we could see a similar thing here. I don't really see either fighter separating themselves like super wide to where it's like, okay, yeah, that was obviously the side. I think it's probably a decision that comes down to whatever the judges see that they like more. If one guy's got a cut, then they give it to that guy. If one guy's gets a knockdown, then they give it to that guy. I think it's just a super close fight. It's probably not one that I'll be betting super heavily. But for a pick, I will take Gene Silva just because I can rely on him to go in there and put on his best. And I think his best might be a little bit better than Jourdain at this point. So I'll take him. Move on. We got Cub Swanson coming in as the underdog against Andre Fili. And the odds we have up on the screen have shifted within the last day since these were made. Cub Swanson's now sitting at plus 200. Andre Fili's sitting at minus 250. So the line's growing in Andre Fili's favor. Probably that has a lot to do with Cub Swanson being 40 years old. He is coming off a win, though, against Akima Dawadu, where it was pretty much a robbery at that point. I mean, Cub Swanson's kids are sitting there at the apex, all 3 of them with their glasses on. And then Cub Swanson gets the decision. And then the memes after is like a picture of his kids and saying, these were the judges that scored the fight for Cub Swanson. Because I don't think he won that fight, but it was a close fight.
Yeah.
And Cub was a big dog in that fight. So he made it closer than the odds would say. And here he is coming in as another big underdog against Andre Fili, who got knocked out against Dan Ige not too long ago. I think it was, 4 months ago? And it was a brutal knockout. So
it was bad. Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, Cub, this could be a retirement fight for him too, considering his age and where he's at in his career. He's on a pay-per-view card now too. So interesting look there. But who do you got?
Yeah, it comes back to these older guys kind of turning back the clock a little bit this year. And if he's out there really putting in the work, maybe he's taking some stuff he's normally not supposed to, and he comes in phenomenal shape. Like, I think this fight could be very close. Fili, like you mentioned, the knockout was not that long ago. It was a brutal knockout. The guy has taken some brutal knockouts in his career. I don't know. Cub Swanson's not really known for having the heaviest of hands in the world, but at the same time, his last 4 wins have all come since 2019, beats Crone Gracie, but he finishes Daniel Pineda, he finishes Darren Elkins, and then has Hakeem Dawodu, kind of clipped and hurt a few times in that fight and landed some big shots. Cub's a dangerous fighter on the ground as well. I just don't know, if Fili doesn't come out here and just starch Cub Swanson and lets him hang around. I don't see how Cub Swanson, doesn't cover a plus 200 price tag. I think he can take it to a split decision. I think, if he lands some big shots, he could hurt Fili in this matchup and steal rounds that way. Plus 200 is a big number for a guy who just beat Hakeem Dawodu, who I think right now would go in there and give Andre Fili everything he's got, a run for his money in that fight as well. So, at this price, hard to ignore it. These older guys have been looking good. Cubs' only losses lately, Jonathan Martinez, who just fought Aldo, lost by a TKO to a kick to the legs. It was brutal. And then he loses to Chikadze, who's one of the best strikers in the division too. I don't necessarily put Fili in that category with those guys. I think his time's a little bit past as well. It's not like Cubs going up against some young, hungry lion here. Yeah. I think he's got a chance to win this fight, and I think he's got multiple ways he could do it. So plus 200, sign me up. I'm taking Cub.
Yeah, I mean, Fili is 34 as well, and a lot of fights in the UFC. Both guys got a wealth of experience. I think the biggest thing for me is like Cub is 40, but he's not getting chinned. Like his chin, he can still take a punch. Like he's getting knocked out, TKO'd, I guess, by leg kicks to Jonathan Martinez, a body kick by Giga Chikadze. It's not like he's getting clipped on the chin and getting put out. So I think he can still take a punch. And he can still deliver a punch. And honestly, I don't know that Andre Fili can still take a punch that well because he got absolutely destroyed by Dan Ige not too long ago. And then you look at his fights before that, he got dropped by Nathaniel Wood, who Nathaniel Wood's not really the biggest power puncher. And then you look and see he got knocked out by Joe Anderson Brito, which was 2 years ago. So I don't know that Andre Fili really warrants a minus 250 price tag here. And another thing is, like, if you watch how Fili's getting knocked out or getting knocked down, it's the same punch, man.
Yeah.
It's a right hand down the middle. And he just seems to keep getting hit by it. And Cub Swanson does have some knockouts by a right cross. So not saying he's going to knock out Andre Fili, but he could definitely knock him down. And that's how you win a round. You only got to win 2 rounds. And I think Cub has the work rate to do it as well. I mean, he still kept pace with Hakeem. Hakeem's a pretty high volume striker, and Fili tends to be a low volume striker throughout his fights. He's got a negative strike differential, consistently gets out volumed by guys. And if this is Cub's retirement fight, like he's probably going to go out there and lay it all out on the line. So plus 200 for Cub Swanson, I think is super live. And I don't know that I would back Fili minus 250 against like anybody. Like he just doesn't really have the fight style to me to warrant that kind of price tag. I mean, unless we're talking super low level, but Cub's not that low level, and I think he's super live. So yeah, I'll go Cub Swanson with you for the pick.
People forget about how good Cub Swanson was back in the day, and like even now in his fights, you see kind of like little flashes of that talent that he used to have. I mean, he went on this run back in it started in 2012 when he knocked out Charles Oliveira, beat Dustin Poirier in his next fight, knocked out Dennis Siver, and then beat Jeremy Stevens. A 2014 Jeremy Stevens, that's like the whole, his famous line he said at the McGregor press conference in that era. Like, dude, he was just a savage back in the day. So, yeah, I don't think plus 200 is off the table whatsoever. I might actually lock that in right here. So, yeah, I'm taking him.
One thing I did see, though, is Cub's been subbed like 7 times or something like that. And Fili's not a big sub guy, but I want to see the line at what it is when it comes out, because I don't that line's got to be nuts.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's something that just, if you're a big prop hunter and you like those long shot props, I'd probably look at a Fili sub and just see what the line is. But
How many submissions does Fili have?
not
3?
that many.
Yeah.
3. Yeah. In
Yeah.
all honesty, he probably doesn't get like takedowns and really look for it. But
He's an alpha male guy, so I mean, he's around grapplers, wrestlers. He
yeah,
gets
he
put in
never
that
shoots
position.
takedowns. Like, I wish he shot takedowns more.
I
He'd
know.
probably be a lot better. But yeah,
If he could mix up his game, he'd have had a lot more success that's up to this part or
yeah,
up to this point in the UFC. But
I agree. Let's move on. We got Ian Machado Garry taking on Michael Venom Page in the first fight of the night on the pay-per-view card. Ian Garry sitting at -146. Small favorite there. Michael Venom Page, slight dog. MVP, 1-0 in the UFC. We were there at UFC 299 in Miami. I was big on Michael Venom Page against Kevin Holland. I thought it was a great matchup for him, and he made Kevin Holland look silly in there,
yeah,
man.
he did.
I know he probably lost that second round, but he controlled most of that fight. So super fun to watch. Just a guy that you never really know what he's going to do. And he's got a lot of different stuff in his arsenal and really frustrates his opponents. He's taking on Ian Garry, who's still undefeated, younger, much younger, 11 years younger, probably entering his prime or at least getting there. He's fighting back in the rankings. Very good kickboxer. This is such a weird matchup to me, man. I just don't know what's going to happen. What do you think is going to happen?
I think we get Ian Nurmagomedov. I think Ian is going to try to put some of his wrestling and grappling skills to use, especially early in the fight, to maybe just try to slow him down or just see if he can have success with it. Because Ian's a good enough striker. I think he's a competent enough striker that if the wrestling doesn't work and it doesn't pan out, like he's not going to, be scared to stand and strike with MVP by any means. You look at MVP, he is a tad older. At some point, this guy's got to slow down. At some point, this guy's got to start getting hurt a little more. Some big shots that he eats. His only 2 losses. One's Logan Storley, a good wrestler. The other one, Douglas Lima. So those 2 losses are against good opponents. But at the Bellator level, you didn't really see anybody come in there with outstanding wrestling besides really Storley and be able to implement that game plan. And it's definitely not Ian Garry's first mixed martial arts base. Ian's a striker, but it looks like he's at shoot the box. He's been working on the ground game, maybe trying to add a little more tools into his arsenal. And I just think he's going to test it out here. MVP, it doesn't really. He's obviously got power, and his striking's so slick, and the accuracy and timing is what makes him so great. But he's not like exactly like flatlining a bunch of people right now. His kicks are good, but a lot of those wins towards the end of his Bellator career, we got decision. There was an injury to Derek Anderson, split decision, Douglas Lima, and then decision to Kevin Holland when he got to the UFC. You can't knock Ian Garry out. Gary's going to work with you. He's going to make it close. And the younger guy with a lot of speed as well to match MVP here, it just makes me think that maybe this is the time we see Venom Page get his first loss in the UFC. I don't know, man. Though it's such a coin toss for me. I like Ian Garry. I like his skills. I think he gets a lot of hate online that blinds people from how good he is as a mixed martial artist. Yeah, he got dropped by Song Kanon, but I think it says more to me that he was able to recover and finish that fight later down the line than it does that he got dropped once. I think he is a very talented fighter. I'm going to take him to beat Michael Venom Page. But I don't know, man. What do you got on this one?
I think both guys are really, really good, and they both fight the same way. So I just don't know, because they're both used to fighting off the back foot and just counter striking, staying at range. I don't know which one's going to go first. And you mentioned Ian Garry going for a takedown, and I just thought in my head, Michael Venom Page flying knee or just throw a knee up there, just knees Ian Garry in the face and he gets knocked out. That'd be amazing. But yeah, I don't know. This is one that I probably won't have any bets on. If I do, it's probably some type of prop. But as far as the money line goes, I just don't know what the play is here. Like, I think MVP could end up frustrating Ian Garry if it is on the feet, because I don't think Ian's going to be able to touch him a lot. Like, MVP is just a guy that's so hard to hit And Ian's a guy that's used to being able to hit guys pretty easily. Guys that'll come into his range and he can throw a teep kick up the middle, throw a right hand, get back out of range and keep moving around. And if MVP is just sitting there jumping around, like, I don't know what his game plan is going to be. So this is just a huge question mark to me. I guess I'll take MVP for a pick, but it's like I have no fucking clue. I really don't. It's like you can't really watch tape on these guys because they've never fought anybody that does what the other guy does.
Yeah.
They're always fighting different type of guys. Like I watched the Jeff Neal fight, and just to see like how Ian Garry fights off his back foot, and God, he fucking ran. He was running. He was running away from Jeff Neal like the entire fight. And obviously, MVP has his blitzes, but he's not gonna keep tracking you down. He has his blitzes and then he backs off. So I don't know. I think MVP could probably land some big shots and could maybe knock out Ian. He's been knocked down before by San Kanan. So I think MVP could probably land the bigger shots, and that's probably why I'm taking him for a pick. But Ian's got maybe has a ground advantage as well. And on the feet, he probably has more volume. But at the same time, MVP is just so hard to hit. It's like, it's such a weird one to me. But it is one that I'm looking forward to see how it unfolds.
Yeah, I mean, the UFC has done a good job of building Garry, because if you watch all of his fights and you look at his opponents, it's still hard. Even after, 3, 6, 7 fights in the UFC, it's still hard to gauge like where he's at as far as, is he a top 10 fighter or not? Because his opponents, he's not really fighting the guys that are really going to push him and test him and give you kind of that top 10 look by any means. Jeff Neal was the closest we were going to get to it, and Garry just kind of made it a boring decision. So when I look at like Jeff Neal, I kind of thought Ian Garry was going to come in and really, hurt him there, maybe find the finish, or at least just completely run away with the fight. Because when you look at good fighters who fight Jeff Neal, Wonderboy Thompson absolutely styled on him and outlanded him by 100 significant strikes. Neil Magny beat him by unanimous decision. Shavkat finished Jeff Neal in the third, and then Ian went to split with him. So it's like, is Ian quite to that, that level of striking, not like a Wonder Boy. Wonder Boy's phenomenal, but is he up there with some really good fighters in this division, or is he still kind of building? Like, I think this is a test that if Ian Garry can get past Michael Venom Page, I think it's time to start paying attention to him as an actual contender in the division.
I agree. Let's move on. We got Mayra Bueno Silva sitting at -138 against Macy Chiasson. Chiasson is 32, and so is Mayra Bueno Silva. And I believe both of them are celebrating the month of June. So there's no edge there, but Mayra Bueno Silva is Brazilian, so maybe there is an edge. Chiasson, she is coming off the win over Penny Kianzad, round 1 sub. And obviously we know Mayra Bueno Silva took an fat L to Raquel Pennington in the title fight, where she won the first round and then started to slow down and ended up losing a decision where she kind of got worked in those later rounds. So interesting matchup here. Probably not one that's going to win fight of the night, but who you got?
I keep thinking this is probably or could be a buy low spot on Mayra Bueno Silva. Loses to Raquel Pennington, and Pennington's just such a technical fighter and has a good gas tank, and that was a 5-round fight. And when Bueno Silva kind of slowed down, she was landing some big shots early. She had some some takedowns, but she got tired, and I don't think she's accustomed to fighting these 5-rounders. I like her better in 3-round fights like this is going to be. Chiasson too. Bueno Silva does have some power in her hands. Like, she throws hard, dangerous on the mat. And we've seen, Chiasson finished in a multiple different, methods. She's been finished by TKO to, what's her face? Who we saw at 296. I don't know. Irene Aldana, sorry. By a soft up kick on her back. Like, after Chiasson was probably winning the fight, in my opinion. And then she takes that loss. That wasn't the best look. She was submitted by Raquel Pennington, who's basically, a wrestler, doesn't get a whole hell of a lot of submission wins. That might have been her 3rd submission win, but hadn't had one in almost 10 years up until that point, 9 years, 8 years. So yeah, I don't know. I think Chiasson's going to be vulnerable if Bueno Silva can get this fight to the ground. I think she's going to be vulnerable in the first 1.5 rounds to the big power shots. Maybe you get some kind of club and sub, or you get her hurt enough to where you can get the fight to the ground. But if she doesn't, and she does start to slow down, Chiasson has some attributes. She's very long. She strikes very long, good at range. She's got a little bit of pop in her hands as well. She just finished Panny Kinziad by submission. We've seen her lock, submissions in like that before too. So I don't know. I'm not like fairly confident on this one, but I do think, if you're getting minus 138 on a Bueno Silva who lost to the, Raquel Pennington, who's the champ, but before that was beating Holly Holm by submission, submitted Lena Landsberg, submitted Stephanie Edgar, who's a good grappler. I just think, there's going to be opportunities and chances in this fight where the neck's going to be exposed or she's going to be able to look for some kind of finish. And if you're giving me minus 138 on a girl who is very close to touching gold, I don't know. It's pretty enticing to me. I haven't played anything yet, but I'm leaning Bueno Silva to get a bounce back win here.
Yeah, I didn't realize Macy Chiasson was so big. Like
she is big and long,
5 inches taller, 5.5 inches in reach. And she usually has a really tough time making 135. So definitely want to keep an eye on weigh-ins. She made it last time, but who's to say that she doesn't make it this time? So it's a tough one because the line has really crashed. I mean, Bueno Silva was like minus 200, and now she's moving down more towards a pick'em type of fight. And I can see why, because Bueno Silva at minus 200 seems a little bit rich, but now that she's down here at, minus 138, or I think it's actually a little bit lower than that right now. Let me just look. Minus 125. I think it's probably Mayra Bueno Silva at this point because she's got the ability to finish the fight. She's super dangerous on the ground. And on the feet, I think she hits a little bit harder. Like, I know she's going to be at a reach disadvantage here, but she throws some pretty hard kicks. And when she does throw her hands, she lets them go. And I think Chiasson has decent striking, decent boxing, but I don't really think it really messes with her opponents. Like when she hits them, it's not really like they're reacting too badly. Like Raquel Pennington pretty much broke her on the feet. She was getting pieced up by Raquel Pennington, goes for a takedown and then gets bulldog choked. So I think that's kind of what happens here. I think Chiasson probably has to resort to a takedown, or even if she does go for a takedown early, I think that's a bad move because you're just giving Mayra Bueno Silva an opportunity to snatch something up. And usually she does. She's got a great armbar. She's got a great ninja choke. She got a knee bar too. Like, I think she should probably win this fight. I think her ceiling's a little bit higher. Not that Macy Chiasson is some bum, but I do like Mayra Bueno Silva here. She will be the pick, and I think she probably gets it done by sub.
I'm going to watch this line. If minus 138 comes down to like even money at the end of the week, I think you got to take Mayra Bueno Silva because that closing line value has been terrible all year. I can't tell you how many fighters I've gotten like plus money on a Monday and they're minus 130 on a Saturday and they lose. Like it's almost like a trap at this point. Every single fighter it's happening to seems to lose, or at least maybe it's just who I'm picking. But if she flips over to the dog, I think it's an auto bet on Bueno Silva.
I agree. Let's move on. We got Anthony Smith coming in at plus 122 against Roman Dolidze, sitting at minus 156. Anthony Smith taking this fight on 7 days notice, I want to say. And Roman Dolidze is taking it on like 7 or 8. And Anthony Smith probably more like 10 or 12?
Yeah.
Like, a little bit. It seems like it wasn't that long ago, but it could be more than like 7 days ago. So both fighters are taking it on very short notice. Roman Dolidze a little bit shorter of a notice, and he is moving up a weight class to 205. And he's coming off back-to-back losses to Vettori and Nasruddin Imavov, and Anthony Smith coming off the win to Vitor Petrino. Very greasy fight. Probably a lot of unknowns here, but what do you got?
Yeah, definitely a weird fight to try to pick because I think the grappling on both sides is good. Like, it could cancel out a little bit. I don't know if either one of them is going to be able to smite each other unless one completely gasses or one gets rocked. I think it's on the feet where it's going to be kind of a fun matchup because both guys, aren't the biggest strikers by any means. I think Dolidze obviously probably holds more power, but he's not a guy that's going to go out there and throw a ton of volume or really like piece you up and throw big combinations. He kind of has a good head kick, throws big shots one at a time. And Anthony Smith for the Khalil Roundtree fight, like he got like finished in the third, but he had some big moments in the fight where he was landing big shots on the feet on Khalil. Like wasn't really hurting him or stumbling him, but like shots that were definitely significant and damaging. And then he's still getting wins here and there. Like Vitor Petrino's submission in round one was insane. I don't think he's going to be able to catch Roman in something like that. But beats Ryan Spann by decision in a hard fought fight where he outlanded him by a mile. I don't know, man. I think Anthony Smith is, live to win this fight. Am I going to be running to the window to place plus 122 on him? Probably not. But I don't think Roman Dolidze does anything that Anthony hasn't seen, or he doesn't do anything, better than any of Anthony's previous opponents in the past couple of years. I think Dolidze is dangerous on the ground. So is Smith. And on the feet, this is kind of a wash. I think Dolidze could hurt him, but if he doesn't, like I think Anthony's going to land more volume. I think he's going to land his fair share of strikes as well. And it's a very tough one to call because Anthony's obviously not in his prime anymore. And Dolidze hasn't, looked like a world beater in his last couple fights, Vittori and Imavov. So yeah, I'm gonna stick with Dolidze to get this done. I do think he'll be a little bit tougher, a little more durable, and the bigger shots will come from him. But this could turn into like a sloppy dog fight.
Yeah, this is kind of a sloppy fight. But that's Roman Dolidze, man. Roman Dolidze is a sloppy fighter. And I think his run in the UFC is just
Ugly.
all unbelievably fluky. Like not even like that impressive, Like he lost to Trevin Giles. Then he beats Laureano Staropoli, who got cut.
By
And then he
decision.
beat Kyle Dawkins, who got cut. And then he beat Phil Hawes, who got cut. And then he beats Jack Hermanson by some calf slicer TKO. And that's his best win. And then he's lost 2 fights in a row. So, Roman, he hits hard, but it's really just an overhand right.
Yeah.
And then when he gets taken to the ground, he's got some crazy jujitsu that guys are just not keen to. And I look at this fight, and I see this kind of like an Anthony Smith Ryan Spann, like a guy that hits hard, that doesn't really have great setups, but he's just a big dude that hits hard and can put your lights out. But I think Anthony Smith will probably be ready for a right hand. It's not like it's something he hasn't seen before. And Anthony Smith is getting knocked out by guys like Khalil Roundtree, who I think is 100 times the striker that Roman Dolidze is. And if he does get taken down by Dolidze, or if he does take down Dolidze, the best attribute on Anthony Smith at this point is his jiu-jitsu. Like, he's not really knocking dudes out, but he can stand there and strike with you. So I think he's probably the more technical striker. I think he's the better overall fighter throughout his career. And I don't really think he's 100% declined. And I think Roman Dolidze, he's older himself. I don't really think he's getting better. So I think Anthony Smith is probably the side for me. And I think Roman Dolidze fighting up a weight class doesn't help. His cardio has never been good. And fighting at 205 probably ain't going to help him. I wouldn't think it would, considering he's taking the fight on 7 days' notice. So, yeah, I'm going to go Anthony Smith on this one as a slight dog, too. I mean, it's not big dog money, but I do think I think he should probably be favored here. I don't know. Like he was a pick 'em against Ryan Spann. I think Ryan Spann's better than Roman Dolidze. I don't know. Am I crazy?
No, I mean Anthony's definitely got the higher level of competition. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And if you're not going to go out there, if Roman's not going to go out there and knock out Smith, I don't know. I feel like Smith's probably the minute winner if this thing's on the feet.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, obvious worry is that Roman chins him, but even when you look at Anthony Smith getting knocked out, it's not like he's getting knocked out cold. How many times have I said that this episode? You know, these old guys that get knocked out, but I'm like, you know, they're not getting Johnny Walker.
Johnny Walker.
Like they're getting TKO. They're not really liking the way it feels when they get hit, but they're not getting put out cold. But yeah.
And we're talking about guys that are on different levels of striking than Roman Dolidze, like Khalil Roundtree and Magomed Ankalaev.
Exactly.
I mean, they're not in the Dolidze category.
Exactly. All right. I just realized we do not have a slide for Joe Pyfer versus Marc-Andre Barriault, and this looks disgusting on the screen, but we're gonna have to make do with it because our slide guy missed one, and we can't miss this fight. Joe Pyfer versus Marc-Andre Barriault. Joe Pyfer coming off the loss to Jack Hermanson, and Marc-Andre Barriault coming off the loss to Chris Curtis. So both guys looking for a bounce back here. Barriault is the underdog at plus 225. Joe Pyfer sitting around minus 300. I think this one's Joe Pyfer by knockout. I think it has it all written all over it. Maybe I'm just giving him too much credit, but I think Marc-Andre Barriault's just too hittable. He just takes too many shots, and I think Joe Pyfer hits like a truck. And if you're there to be hit against Pyfer, he's probably going to knock you out. And even if he doesn't, he could take you to the ground and sub you. I just don't see how Marc-Andre Barriault, you know, weathers the storm early like he normally tries to do and then take over later, because I don't think he's going to be able to. So keep it short and simple. I think it's Joe Pyfer by finish. What do you got?
I'm on the same side. I think this is a good bounce back spot for him. You know, Jack Hermanson's movement made it tough for Joe Pyfer, and his toughness. Like Pyfer was landing some bombs in that fight. He fought really well through the first half of the fight and kind of, you know, got a little bit tired, but Joe Pyfer had never been really dragged to the into the second, into the third round. So I think it's a great learning experience for him. And it's like he got to learn against the Jack Hermanson, who's a very high level mixed martial artist all the way across the board. He's not just a good grappler, you know, he's a good striker, a good point fighter. And, you know, Pyfer kind of got frustrated with that. Barriault is good when, you know, when Eric Anders is fighting him, who doesn't have a ton of volume by any means. And Andre can kind of be the one that's fighting downhill and pushing guys back up against the cage. And he's got decent cardio, and he can kind of unload in the second and third. And then, you know, guys like Julian Marquez, who, you know, that win for Marc-Andre doesn't age the best, considering Marquez just got completely destroyed by Zachary Reese, who's winless in the UFC. You know, Marc-Andre's lost to the Chris Curtis fight where he landed a lot of volume, just nothing really like crazy or meaningful. Nothing that's going to knock out Joe Pyfer. He landed good volume like he always does. But I think once Marc-Andre takes a few big shots from Joe Pyfer, that volume is going to drop off a cliff. I don't think he's going to be super inclined to try to, you know, close the distance and really land these 4 or 5 punch combinations. Because if you catch a few hooks from Pyfer, I think that really stops him in his tracks. I do think Pyfer has like some of the most insane power we're going to see in the UFC in a long time. And I think Barriault isn't a guy that's got a rock solid chin by any means. We've seen him hurt. I mean, Chidi and Jaquani knocked him out. You know, finished that fight. You know, we've seen him. He has seen him wobbled before. I just don't know if Pyfer's even got like a cardio issue. I think maybe he just came in a little overconfident against Jack Hermanson, got a little frustrated, and, you know, ended up losing the fight. But he fought to the end. It's not like he's, you know, gave up on himself. He's a guy that's probably going to, you know, work on some things from that loss, learn from it, and come back stronger. So I fully expect him to get the win.
Yeah, I mean, he completely won the first 2 rounds against him. And like, it was pretty obvious. And this is a 3-rounder. So even if he falls off a cliff in round 3, I think he's tough enough to survive.
Right.
And I don't really think it hits that far. I think Pyfer probably finishes and win within the first or the second. So Pyfer is the pick. Let's get back to the slides because that was absolutely disgusting. We got Brian Ortega taking on Diego Lopes in the co-main event. Lopes sitting on minus 142, and Ortega sitting as the slight dog. Big jump up here for Diego Lopes, but another big opportunity for him to be in an insane spot. I mean, the guy made his debut a little over a year ago, and here he is, International Fight Week co-main event, possibly a number one contender spot, maybe. Because Brian Ortega picked up a win against Yair Rodriguez, and people were saying he could probably get a title shot, but here he is fighting Diego Lopes. Love the fight. Who do you think wins?
Man, this is the one. This I'm like looking forward to this fight more than I have any like in a long time. Maybe even this year. It's one of my favorite fights. I think this has a chance to be an all-out war for 3 rounds. Both guys are tough. Both guys on the mat are so good with the jiu-jitsu that it's going to be super fun to watch if the fight goes there. But I almost think it's just going to be a stand-up war between the two. I think both guys are, dangerous enough that the other one maybe is going to be a little bit hesitant to take it there. I do think though, like when you look at Diego, and obviously if you really look at the records, he's got more professional mixed martial arts experience. Ortega obviously has fought the better level of competition and has way more UFC experience. But when I look at the Mavzar loss for Lopes and even the fight before that on Contender Series at this level, he learned a lot from the Brito loss, it looked like to me. And he got better in between then and fighting a Mavzar Evloev who still undefeated, and a lot of people think probably going to be, possible champion in this weight division at some point. And he had Evloev in so much trouble in a couple separate occasions that it showed you that this guy's for real, for one, and it showed you that he's never out of a fight. And he's got some decent cardio because that was kind of off the couch getting into the octagon against Mavzar there. And then he goes in against Gavin Tucker, destroys him, goes in against Sabatini, destroys him, which he should have done in those 2 fights. But then he goes in against Sadiq Youssef as a -130 favorite. Everybody thinking, okay, this is going to be his first big test since Evloev, and he destroys him. Like, this guy is fighting way above what everybody's expecting from him. And now he's getting, as a result of finishing those 3 fights like that, he's getting one of the best fighters in the division in Ortega. Ortega hasn't been the most active fighter recently. I also saw that he said he's moving up to 155 no matter what after this fight, which is interesting. Maybe those weight cuts are getting really tough. Maybe that's gonna be a bit of an issue as far as his cardio and stuff. But he's also as dangerous as they come. He maybe has one of the best chins we've ever seen at 145 in the UFC. The guy can be a zombie in there when he's getting shots landed on him. So he's never out of a fight either. Like that Yair Rodriguez fight, his last one shows it, where he rolls his ankle, then he's getting dropped, and then he comes back, gets some takedowns, and finds the sub. So, like I said, man, these skill sets almost are like identical in some aspects. The grappling is insane. The submission game, very, very good. And even the striking, it's maybe not the most technical, but both guys hold some pop. Both guys are scrappy. Both guys can take a punch. I don't know, man. This could be an all-out war. I'm taking my boy Diego Lopes, though. I think Lopes. I just think it's his time. I don't know. There's something about him. What do they say now? He's got some aura. Diego Lopes definitely has the aura. But T City's a legend, though, and you can never count him out of a fight.
Yeah. I'm gonna hate to see either of these guys lose, to be honest.
Right. Same.
But I think I gotta go emo kid here, just because I think he could probably hurt him on the feet. And I know Diego. The bad thing about Diego is we haven't really seen like a much extended fight time since the Evloev fight. So it's like, well, do we know if he could carry power over into like the second and third round, or if he looks better or not against in the second and third round, because he's just been murking guys within the first 100 seconds of these fights. I don't know that he submits Brian Ortega, but if he does, that would be absolutely nuts. On the feet, I think he probably hurts Ortega early. Like the worst look for me was that Yair was just killing him on the feet early. And then Yair just has no takedown defense, no ground game other than a triangle off his back. And he's a weak man. Like Yair's just weak. He's a long guy that just depends on his kickboxing and his weird striking. And then when he gets taken down, he's just a fish out of water. So Ortega gets the arm triangle there, but I don't know, man. It seems like a little bit of I don't want to say recency bias, because I think you could say recency bias for both guys, but it almost seems to me like nobody was really taking Brian Ortega in that fight. And now it's like, okay, now he's back, because he he's just not an active fighter. And he took a almost 2 years off, comes back and gets a win, and that's like now he's back. Well, I don't know. I mean, he's taken so much damage over the years. He's picked up a lot of good wins, and he's had to battle back in a lot of spots. But at the end of the day, he's super hittable on the feet, and he doesn't really have the best wrestling game. And even if he does take down Diego Lopes, I trust Diego Lopes to not get subbed or at least make it hard for Brian Ortega on the ground. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Diego Lopes as well. Like, guy's got max aura, man. He's got max aura. And I think he could probably find a finish early. But if it does go later, then it could get dicey. It's 3 rounds though. So even if he is able to blitz him early, like, it's not really much that Ortega can do later in the fight other than find a finish. You know, it's not like he can win the last 3 rounds or something like that. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Diego Lopes.
This feels like a passing of the torch almost. Like, Ortega is going to leave the division, go to 155. He's had a great career at featherweight, and Diego Lopes is like that one fighter that kind of emulates his game. Like, this is kind of changing of the guard type of spot. And also another thing I look at when I'm looking at their stats, both guys have a bad striking defense and a bad striking differential. Like, this could be just a slobber knocker on the feet.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't wait for it, man. But Diego, Alexa Grasso, he's mixed in with that camp. That's a champion. He knows what it takes. He's around very great fighters, training with guys like Alessandro Costa, tough dudes. I think he'll be well prepared, even though this is short notice for both guys. And I think Diego is probably still fully invested into his fight career, whereas I think Brian Ortega maybe has ventured out a little bit and is looking to, like, what am I going to do after fighting type of thing? Like, let's start getting some other things going on the side, maybe to prepare me for when I'm done fighting in the UFC, as where I think, Diego's 100% in it right now. So, and way more active and way more momentum too. So
I will say this though. If you are looking at props and you like the Ortega side, Ortega by decision might be a decent prop, because that's usually how Diego I said Ortega by decision, right? Yeah, that's how Diego loses, man. Like, 4 of his 6 losses come by decision, and could just outvet him. But let's move on to the main event. We got Alex Pereira coming in as the favorite. The line is moving down. He is now minus 150 against Jiri Prochazka, who sits at plus 120. The rematch on short notice. Does anything change, man? Like, we saw this fight 8 months ago, and Alex Pereira knocked him out, but it wasn't a one-sided affair. I mean, Jiri had his moments, but eventually he just did get chinned. You could say it was arguably a premature stoppage. I probably would have liked to see it go a little bit longer, to be honest, just a little bit more of a stamp on it, but it wasn't the worst stoppage I've ever seen. Pereira since then knocked out Jamal Hill. Jiri Prochazka knocked out Alexander Rakic, both at UFC 300. They both had the same amount of time to recover. Both had the same amount of time to prepare. What do you think on this one, man?
Oh, man. I don't really understand how the books have still not made Alex more than like a minus 175, minus 180 favorite. Like, the guy's always within betting range and he's always winning, besides the Israel Adesanya knockout loss. But the guy's so damn good on the feet, and he's so technical, and his game plans with how he's going to break you down in the striking is just way more advanced than anybody's he's fighting. And, as for as good as Jiri is, it's especially better than Jiri, because Jiri doesn't really game plan. Jiri kind of comes in there and he's got the power and he's got the weird movement, switches stances, is tough as nails too. But he doesn't really have any, nothing's like methodical. Nothing's really mapped out. He's just in there for a fight. He's the way of the samurai or whatever. He's just looking for a war every time he steps in there. And that, it showed in the last fight especially. But when you're fighting a guy against Alex, who's going to kind of stay back and break you down with the leg kicks, and the leg kicks are super heavy too. It's hard to eat a lot of them. And then once you're worried about that, he starts, jabbing your face off, and eventually he's going to hit you with the massive left. I just think that's going to work on Yuri most times they fight. Like Yuri could land the big shot, sure. Alex has been knocked out before, like we saw it against Izzy, but that's at 185 after one of the most insane weight cuts we've seen in the middleweight division. Now he's fighting at light heavyweight. I think he's more hydrated. I think the chin's a little bit better. And for Yuri, like he gets hurt in every single fight. He's one of the most hittable fighters at the 205 division. And I said it on the last show, and I looked really good for saying it through the first 7.5 minutes that I think Yuri's a tad overrated. You know, he goes into these fights and he wins by a big knockout, but he's also getting pieced up at times too. And he's on the verge of losing fights, or he's losing fights up until that moment. And it started to happen against Rakic, where Rakic was also able to chew up the leg very badly and land some big shots to really rock Yuri. And the one thing I remember thinking when the leg kick started landing for Rakic is that Yuri just doesn't, he doesn't really change anything between fights. Like he got his leg kicked up against Pereira. He knows that's in Rakic's arsenal, and he doesn't do anything to prepare for it or to avoid him. He just eats them and hopes for the best. I don't think he has when he's training, I think he's just training weird stuff, cardio stuff, strength, and the samurai deal. And he's not really focused on the basics of mixed martial arts. And I don't know. I think when you get to this level against a tactician like Alex Pereira, I think you're going to struggle. So I'm taking Pereira here. It's hard to ignore what he's done in the UFC. He gets doubted every single time, and he comes out with a big knockout every single time. I don't see this one being any different. Sure, it's hard to beat a guy 2 times in a title fight, but Alex Pereira is on the verge of being one of the best we've ever seen in the UFC. I don't know. You got anything else on it? I'm taking Pereira.
Well, it's funny that you bring up like the MMA skills thing. Like he's out there in the woods doing his samurai shit or whatever. Cause that's just how he wins fights. Like he doesn't win fights based on having the better skills. He just goes out there and fucking outdogs you. Like that's what he did to Rakic. That's what he did to Glover. That's what he did to Uzdemir. Like pretty much did that to Dominic Reyes. All of his UFC wins are just him outdogging you. Cause he's in there getting hit a bunch, getting rocked a bunch, but he just finds a way to overcome it and eventually break you and knock you out. The problem with Alex Pereira is like you can't get hit that many times against Alex Pereira because he's going to knock you out. So coming into this one, I don't think anything really changes for Yuri. He's just going to come in with the same thing. He's going to try to outdog him. And honestly, I think he's got to give him kind of less respect in this fight, because in the first fight, I think he gave him a little bit more respect than he was used to. Maybe that was due to him coming back from an injury and he was just a little bit slower and just had to build himself into it. But you're not going to win a fight against Pereira just kickboxing him. And I don't think Yuri has that intention, but he has to go in there and just fucking go for it, because I don't see him out kickboxing Pereira. And if he gets hit with that left hook, nobody's surviving that left hook, man. And Yuri, I don't think has the greatest chin. I mean, obviously he has a good chin because that's how he wins fights and he just takes a shitload of damage and then overcomes it. But he does get hurt a lot in a lot of these fights, but sometimes he's just able to overcome it. And in this one, it's just, I can't sit here and say, yeah, he's going to be able to take every shot from Pereira and overcome it and then knock out Pereira. I don't see that. So really what I see from Yuri is him overwhelming Alex, like for a win condition. I see him overwhelming Alex early and finding somewhat of an early knockout. But is that really realistic to me? Probably not, but I think that's his win condition. Maybe he could, mix in the ground game and do it that way, but he tried that in the first fight, and all that happened is the round ended, and then start the next round on the feet, and then he gets knocked out. So I don't know. I mean, Alex Pereira is the pick for me. He gets hit less. He has a better striking accuracy. At 205, he seems to have a better chin. And he's just a better kickboxer. So I got to go with Alex Pereira for a pick. But even, if you look at the betting odds, even at minus 150, like it's not very pricey, but it just seems like it's never pricey for a reason. Like the books have just never put a big price tag on him, but he keeps winning. And I look at the closing odds from the fight in November. Pereira closed at -125, knocks out Ghemmouri. And then this time around, they opened Pereira at -135. So it's like they pretty much set it at exactly what it closed at. So it just seems weird, man. Just seems super weird. Like, and I've also seen the narratives of like Ghemmouri's gonna win because they want to set up the trilogy fight.
I was gonna say that.
And I don't
So
know.
stupid.
It obviously it seems great on paper, but it's not like, I don't know. Maybe they. I've seen people say the UFC is rigged and stuff, but I don't know. I don't know.
Well, the thing is too, like maybe the UFC would like that, but if you think they made this fight for that reason, like they threw this together because Conor McGregor backed out. They didn't have this planned out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the second thing is like the UFC can want an outcome to happen all they want, but it's a fight. Like this is, this is two of the most dangerous 205ers on the planet. Anything could happen. So at the end of the day, like I don't know, all that shit's just chatter.
I will say this,
I've learned that. What's
I
that?
will say this. This is, if there's ever a time for Ghemmouri to beat Pereira, it's right now. This is his best opportunity. Short notice. Pereira's not fully healthy.
Yeah.
And I think Pereira probably looks at this like, I've knocked him out before. I can knock him out again. You know, it's kind of like the Adesanya thing. Knocked out Adesanya twice before that, once in kickboxing, once in the UFC. Takes him on again at UFC 287, super confident, and then he gets caught. So if there's ever a chance for Ghemmouri to win, it is this Saturday. And he could pull it off. But if you have to go based on the skills, I got to take Pereira,
And also, when people say, the UFC wants Pereira to win to set up the trilogy, the UFC could also want Alex to win to move up to heavyweight and get that double strap and create an absolute global superstar out of it too.
Yeah.
So, but dude, I don't know. This fight, I've got a weird feeling. I think what's the under at? I know it's 1.5 rounds, got to be, but
I think it's chalk to the over, like -170 for.
Dude, I could see this one just being a fast one.
Yeah, I could see that too.
So dangerous on either. Like you said, Ghemmouri's got to win early probably if he wants to win, and Alex is going to be countering, and both guys dangerous, man. I don't know. I think this is going to be a fast one.
Yeah, I think short notice. It also brings up a lot of early finishes. It just tends to be that way. Guys underprepared. Yeah, you're not ready for everything. Maybe not in the best shape. You just got to go for it, type of thing. So, yeah, can't wait though. I mean, I could watch these guys fight 10 times.
Oh yeah.
So
as good as it gets.
All right, those are the picks. That's the breakdown for UFC 303. Once again, if you want all the bets, jump in the Home of Fight Picks premium membership and stay up to date on Home of Picks, and we'll be dropping that discount code to join for the week. Other than that, you can follow me at HeyJai Picks on the medias. Where can they find you?
All social medias at the Parlay MMA.
Good luck on your bets. Good luck on your picks, and enjoy UFC 303. Till next time, the double leg signing out.